Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Doski, and joining us again for the second time is special guest Tom D'Agostino. And this time we're here to talk about the history of vampires that resided once, or maybe there might be still lingering even to this day, but it's vampires. And anyway, so Tom, welcome back to the show. And, so how have you been since the last time we talked?
Oh, great. Thanks. I'm glad to be back, actually. But we've been very busy, my wife and I. So, with all our events and talks and tours and whatnot, new book working on.
Perfect. Yeah. And we'll get to that a little bit after the segment. But yeah, to kick things off, vampires. I think we kind of briefly touched on it last time, Tom, but for those that may not have listened to the first episode with you, how would you define a vampire in maybe modern time versus like the 1700s?
Well, the modern vampire, obviously, when Bram Stoker's book came out, Dracula, then Hollywood took over. Your modern vampire is this creature that rises from the grave, undead body, and sucks the blood from his victims and turns them into a vampire. Where the actual New England vampire was a whole different entity. That was what they called a spectral ghoul. It was not the body rising from the grave. It was the spirit of the person who would rise out of the grave and feed upon the lifeblood of the living, namely their family, for fear of being caught. And then the spirit would go back into the grave and keep the body nourished in the grave. And the theory behind this, the superstition was that as long as that body remained in whole, even if it was decomposing, the spirit would continue to rise out of the grave and feed upon the living family members. They called it a spectral ghoul.
Wow. Interesting. What a different way to look at it. And, back in the day with vampire too, they called it consumption, or I think they said some other word, but, consumption would more of like tuberculosis, which we didn't really understand back in those days, unfortunately. But, and the fact that some of these bodies didn't decompose right away, isn't that a little, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know too much about this, but would you say that's a little suspicious that they're not decomposing fast like it should?
There's reasons behind it. Because when they didn't have embalming, of course, and when someone died of tuberculosis or consumption, or I think it was like dysis that they called it too, PHSI, they would bury them, but sometimes they'd be burying them in the colder weather, where now you're putting someone in the grave, on the ground, and it's very cold. That would obviously stall the process. On other times, which has been known, that you have very rich soil, kind of strange soil, it would almost preserve the kind of soil that they were buried in, would almost preserve the body for some time, longer. There are other things like people weren't medically adept to, like the heart being almost all protein was the last thing to actually decompose. So you go in and you see this body all decomposed, or partially decomposed, and then you see a whole heart there, and you're like, whoa.
Oh, that's fair. There's interesting soil. Yeah, I could see the freezing temperatures, especially in New England weather. Yeah, when it reaches like negative degrees, that does help. You'll be like a frozen popsicle by the end of it. But yeah, soil. That's interesting. I guess I never thought of specific soil that could help preserve something, but I guess that makes sense, especially with the dirt and mud. I guess in certain areas, the thickness. I guess that would make even some sense too.
Yeah, that could, yeah, because it would basically probably just create a vacuum.
That's true. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not no scientist or anything, so it's not like I would really know. But yeah, it's interesting. All right. So Tom, I know we want to talk a little bit about some of the interesting tales, and you have some very interesting items for some of the tales. So I guess where would you like to start us off for people that may not know about vampires in Vermont?
Well, actually, we'll start off with a Connecticut case really quickly because it ties to Vermont. In fact, the Rhode Island case is all tied to Vermont because most of the people where this took place had moved from Rhode Island to Vermont. A lot of them were Rhode Islanders originally. But in 1784, a documented case in the Hartford Current, or Connecticut Current, as it was called then, a man talks about how some of his family members, Isaac Johnson, was sick. And a quack doctor, they called him, or actual Romanian doctor, said, when you dig up the body, look for sprouts growing on the remains, some sort of growths of sprouts growing, and also look for vines that may be going from coffin to coffin in the family plot. You find those sprouts and you find that vine and you cut that vine, it may just cut the out the vampire cases or whatever, it'll cut the plague out. And so they did dig up the body, and the newspaper was there and all that. And they didn't find any sprouts or any of that stuff. So it was kind of interesting. They did find like things growing underneath the grave, but you got to figure, hey, they grass seeds or something when they dug it up. But after that became one of the things for a lot of people thought to look for. And in a few cases, like in Vermont and everything, they did look for that as well. The actual cases, which is interesting, in Vermont that are documented starting as early as 1793, which is only a few years later, 9 years later, which is really great because you have Lieutenant Spaulding of Dummerston, and then you have Lieutenant Burton, or Isaac Burton, Captain Isaac Burton of Manchester, Vermont. About the same time, Isaac Burton's wife dies, and I guess, they had that thing, the typical thing, you wait a year, mourning and stuff. Well, he didn't. He met or knew Huldah, and they married really quickly, Huldah Powell Burton, and she became sick. And the townsfolk are like, yeah, it's it's your ex-wife coming back to take revenge. She's a vampire. And because Huldah now is exhibiting those symptoms of consumption, the blood, the delusions, the fevers, all that kind of stuff, coughing up blood. So they decided to take Rachel Harris Burton out of the ground, perform an exorcism, and basically, they'll kill Huldah. Well, they did. They actually dug her up. And the Jacob Mead and Timothy Mead, the two brothers, they actually presided over it. One, Jacob, was the blacksmith where they burned the heart, liver, lungs of Rachel, and Timothy Mead said prayers and stuff. But the wild thing about this is they didn't see the vine thingy, but what they did was they burned the heart, liver, lungs, meaning, okay, look, the body's no longer whole, so that's going to end. And they took it one more step further. They fed the ashes to Huldah with medicine, and she drank them. Which apparently didn't work because she died in September of that year.
Yeah, and he was considered part of the curse too, right?
Yeah. But I guess it did kind of stop, or basically it slowed it all down for the family. But yeah, this was it was just if you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick. They didn't understand it, even though Benjamin Mott had tried to isolate this tuberculosis germ in 1720. Nobody believed him until Dr. Koch in 1880s finally did it in front of a whole panel of scientists. But in the meantime, they're pulling on superstition because nobody knew. They said, you got you open a window, rub some onions on you or something, whatever. And they would, these people don't forget, you're coughing across the table at each other. You're sleeping in the same bed in the winter because it's freezing cold. So the close quarters made for really fast contagion, and also sometimes wiped out whole families. The Spauldings of Dummerston, Vermont, were an example where several of them got ill, including Lieutenant Spaulding, and they died of tuberculosis or consumption. When one of the sisters got ill, they said enough's enough. And they decided to perform the ritual, and they did. They performed the exorcism on the last brother who died, thinking, there's the vine thing, it's going from coffin to coffin. Get the last coffin, and we'll have the latest vampire. And they did, and believe it or not, the sister lived to an old age. I'm not sure if it was Olive or there was another, but even the young brothers who were very strong, they said very strong and muscular, they succumbed to the disease also.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been Anna. I'm not sure. They don't specify in the history books which one actually lived, but they do one of the sisters who was ill actually got over it. And they figured, whoa, it worked. Let's do it again.
Yeah, and if it was Anna, she supposedly died on January 13th, 1849, and she was roughly 81 years, 9 months, and 6 days. So, wow.
Yeah, so she got, Well, there's a thing, too. A lot of these people, they always say they had short lives. The average life expectancy was only short if you lived like in a city where it's filthy and dirty and you work in factories. But these farm people, they had to get up and move those muscles every day. So a long life, if you didn't die from a disease, you're going to live a pretty good life.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's just interesting how fast they were dropping, too, for the Spaulding family, too, which you can even see on the grave when you go visit at the Burnett Cemetery in Dummerston, too. In case people don't know, too, so part of the family, I think it's just the father, right? The father, the only one that's not really buried with everybody else.
Right, yeah. He's buried. It was kind of strange. I think when he died, they buried him in a certain spot, but where the original was going to be buried, the plot was prone to being flooded out and becoming like a bog. So that's why they're all not buried together.
Right, and I can't remember without looking it up, but there are like a half hour or so difference, I want to say, away from each other, which is interesting. That, you have to, basically, if you want to see one side of the family, you got to go to the other side too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Manchester, what you were saying with Captain Isaac Burton, he's also another one where he was falling for the fact that the first wife was coming back, or second wife was coming back after him, this and that. There's also something about an altar to the demon vampire. I don't know if that was supposed to be like a sacrificial thing.
They did make an altar. There was an altar, of course, to lay the body on and, say prayers. And then they would cut out the vitals, and then they burned them in the blacksmith's forge. Now, the funny thing about the Manchester one is, I think it was they said somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people showed up for this event. It was basically a fang fair.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I mean, all I could picture is, people like selling the balloons and cotton candy and, jugglers and all this stuff. And then
just have a good time with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a good time with it. So I'm trying to think. So this is the one that's really tricky too, where there's not really like a cemetery or anything like that. It's just like, I don't know, like a field or something. And so there's really no marker. But is there any type of way to say like this Captain Isaac Burton actually existed?
Well, they do know it from war records, from records like that. I think the wife is buried near a churchyard near the center of town or something, or in the square of town. It's been a while, but yeah, and so you know that they existed through all that. They got church records, military records, the land records, and the records in the history book of Manchester that talks about it. So they have a
in the history
Manchester
book.
history, and they mention it too.
It's crazy. Now, now you have like a manuscript. You said. Now, what one was that one for?
Oh, Frederick Ransom. Yeah, the actual manuscript was in the library in Woodstock on the Common, and I was able. They gave me an opportunity to just make a copy of that one page where Frederick Ransom wrote a manuscript about his family and Daniel Ransom, which is a cool manuscript. I think I've got it here. I'll see if I can find it quickly. This is my really cool notebook on vampires and stuff.
That's a
Here's the
cool
dollar
little.
store one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's a
Here
cool
it
little
is. Yep.
find too.
Yep. Frederick Ransom, the second son of my father and mother, were born, and blah blah blah. And it was from the memoirs of Daniel Ransom. Now, Frederick became ill, and the Ransom family, of course, someone else's mother became ill, and the doctor. It was related that there was a tendency in our family to consumption, and that I, who am now 1894, over 80 years old, would die with it before I was 30. Now that's, and he says the idea hereditary was a superstition. It was said that if the heart of one of the family who died of consumption was taken out and burned, others would be free from it. Yeah, that's right in the manuscript. So there's their thing now, believing, if the whole family's being boom, boom, boom taken. Now, they don't mention vampire here, which was pretty interesting, but they do mention that the family was prone to consumption and that if they burn the heart, the others would be freed from it, meaning there was still some sort of spirit or something that would rise if the body wasn't basically, dissected or exorcised.
Yeah, that is an interesting way that they don't use it. But I'm also wondering if they didn't do it because maybe one, it would be, like who would believe that? So the next best thing to do is kind of just cover up vampire with a different type of word, in which they did with consumption and so on. So maybe they were trying to put the fear of the consumption because obviously it was big back in those days. Because I don't know. Once again, I'm not a historian, but back so. We were talking about the 1793s and etc. Now for this Woodstock one, we're talking 1830. So consumption back then, even back in the 1900s, I want to say, there still wasn't really too much of a cure going on for tuberculosis. So, I mean, I'm just trying to think. So maybe that was their way of putting the fear into people. So, like, I guess a good example would look at COVID-19. Like I guess you could say that's more of like a modern era now of consumption in a way.
Yeah, the basically what happens with the consumption thing too is that they it wasn't until like World War II or something, or after World War I, where they actually began to really have something like, okay, we can inoculate people, let's do it. But the thing about consumption and tuberculosis back then is one of the treatments they thought was Colorado Springs, where the air was fresh, mountain airs. They had consumption camps and everything where the people were quarantined because, it was one of those things, and as time went on, some people did actually get over it. And it's a lot, obviously a lot didn't. But back like from this early 1700s, Voltaire, the famous French writer, said that consumption is caused by someone else who died of consumption, their spirit coming back and either biting you or something where you can't see it, mainly like below the stomach, on the back of the neck, somewhere where you don't see it. And then what happens in the end is you contract consumption and you become pale and gaunt and death-like and white. And then when you die, you perpetuate that, your spirit. And people took that to heart, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they figured they want their loved one to be staying dead, and instead now it's like, oh my god, what did I do? Why is she or they
Yeah.
attacking me? Depending on
And
who
then,
died
and
first.
a lot of it, I think, was also the fact that, okay, you just saw your sister or your brother or your mother, your father, whatever, daughter die, and now you've got it, and you're having bad dreams because, first of all, it doesn't make you delusional. You're feverish and having delusions and and you saw that person die, so oh my God, I'm on my way now too. Nothing I can do. And now, of course, you're going to see them visiting you at night because you're having these nightmares and you're wasting away, basically. So now you're going to say, they came and visited me last night and, and now I'm sicker.
Yeah. And the only cure to do now is to go to where you just buried your loved one and see if she's showing signs of no decomposing or some sort of what was it like? If there's blood still in the organs or something like that.
Yeah. What would happen after they died? Because of two reasons. One is they didn't do embalming, so yeah, you buried them as they were. And now they died. They got blood in their lungs and everything. Which, when the body starts to decompose, of course, it starts to bloat the chemicals and everything. Would push the blood out of the mouth, and there'd be always residual blood in the heart, obviously, and coagulating. So they see this and they're like, "Oh, they just fed." Because let's face it, people, even doctors weren't like medically trained like they are today.
No.
So yeah, so there's a lot of that kind of controversy and conjecture as well.
Well, and then we kind of go into the final era of Woodstock there with the final tale, basically of a Corwin, which everybody is sort of familiar with them. Which it's just family of the Corwin family who like resided, and then like all of a sudden, like the family once again is struck by this curse. They're trying to figure out what to do, and the next thing they get told is, same thing like we have learned since the 1830, right? Or
the Corwin thing is supposedly.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. 1817 is what I mean.
Oh,
and
okay.
where you said like in the unpublished manuscript to basically burn the heart. So it sounds like from 1817 that's where I guess word was spreading. So here we are, 13 years later, 1830. What an interesting number, by the way. So and then it's like they already knew what to do back then. So it's very interesting. It makes me wonder if by it makes me wonder from 1817 if they somehow got word of, well, if you, like you were saying earlier, like if you start seeing this, maybe, go to your loved one, burn the heart, this and that, to try to see if it will break the curse or whatever you want to call it. Which I think back in the day, that's what they called it. You were cursed.
Yeah, that was the burning of the heart and feeding the ashes to the sick became the cure du jour. Even though most of the time it didn't work, but yeah, that was the Corwin one, which they actually, according to what was written, they took a pot and they mixed, after they burned the heart, liver, lungs, they put the ashes in this pot and they put it mixed in bull's blood, and then they dug it into, they put it in supposedly in the Woodstock Common, about 15 feet deep, and put a giant slab over it. But the problem is with that, there's no Corwins buried in the Cushing Cemetery, no names of Corwins known. Dr. Joseph Gallup may have existed, but the Gallups were a Rhode Island family, and the Woodstock Common has been, obviously changed, dug up many times for all kinds of reasons, and they never found this giant slab or pot with bull's blood and ashes. So most people think this is probably one of those stories that someone may have made up and wrote and got taken to heart, like kind of like when Orson Welles was doing the War of the Worlds and people believed it.
Yeah, and speaking of I want to say it's the Corwin here is what I'm looking at. But they back in the day too. Let's see, when was it? It was in a newspaper article actually, and it was dated October 9th, 1890, and it was called "Vampirism in Woodstock." It's a very interesting little article. They're talking they were talking. I'm pretty sure about the. Yeah, here it is. I just wanted to double check myself, but yeah, they're saying the name of the family concerned was Corwin, and that uh, Thomas Corwin was a sometime a senator in the Congress from Ohio. So, I mean, I know this is supposedly the one where they say there's no proof that such a Corwin family existed, but then there's a newspaper article basically saying that, well, this guy named, et cetera, what I just said, is sometimes a senator. I think I just said Thomas Corwin. Yeah. Thomas Corwin is supposedly a senator from the Congress from Ohio. So it's just interesting that, if we don't have any proof about this Corwin in Woodstock, Vermont, but yet there's a Tom Corwin that's supposedly a senator from Ohio, I guess.
Well, there is a known fact that there was a great migration west about that time, and many families, picked up their belongings and went. And and probably that's also why there was a few vampirism cases in Ohio, because these people brought with them some of that superstition still, and whether they brought their family's remains or not, well, I don't know about that. It'd be pretty weird. Okay, yeah, let's go dig up Auntie Elma. She's been dead 40 years, but we'll find something. And there was a migration to Ohio, so a lot of these families would not, exist anymore in certain areas. In fact, the one that was found, the Waltons, when JB 55 was found, the only known physical proof of vampirism that we have physically, it was in the Walton Cemetery in Connecticut. And when they reburied the cemetery because it was falling out of the side of a sandbank, the Waltons came and they had migrated from Connecticut to Maryland, Ohio, California. So yeah, shortly after, around the 1830s, actually.
Wow. The 1830s. Now, here's a fun question that, so I think I've seen pictures in this in UK. So I'm wondering if any type of cemeteries around here that you may have known, Tom. I mean, this is just a head picker scratcher now, but in the United Kingdom overseas, if they believe that somebody was a vampire, not only did they bury the body in a cemetery, but they even went one step further and put a steel cage thing around them so that they can't even rise out from the grave. So I'm wondering, is there anything similar like that around here in America?
No, not that I know of, unless it's just one or two instances. It wasn't a common practice here. Also, that was for grave robbing too, and it's a big thing. Back then there was very little here as far as grave robbing. There was some. I mean, you got the universities and everything, but
Hazleton State College would one.
Yeah, that was the rich to have their, because I think it was Benjamin Harrison, President Harrison's son, I think, or something, was found in one of the college labs being cut up after he was buried. So they made laws against grave robbing here, but it was still, it still was one of those things. A lot of the things like that didn't come here, like that in mort stones, which would be what you rest the coffin on when you're walking the coffin to the cemetery from maybe the church, if it was a distance. They had on the side of the road these big slabs you could rest the coffin on the way. And there's, very little, if any, in this country. So those kind of things never made it.
Okay.
They would just cut the heart, liver out, and lungs, and that was good enough for them.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I'm looking at the thing here, but it looks like I didn't write down the name. But there was a teacher, I guess. Uh, I'll just read the little thing that I have here for Castleton State College real quick. So it involved the old chapel for a grave robin here. There's also a nice little article that they did about the grave robin newspaper that was published in the Rutland Daily Herald on July 30th, 1964, where it was called the grave robbery, different in 1830, which is interesting. They even had to go back to a specific year, which was 1830. Um, so what I find interesting is that this college, once again, is known for grave robbing, but at the same time, they didn't get caught until they ended up digging up the trustee's dead wife, and that's
Oh
how they
yeah.
got caught. And then, in order to try to cover it up, so they couldn't identify the body, they tried chopping her head off.
Right. I remember reading about that. Okay.
Yeah, so I do have that much. I just cannot find the name, unfortunately. But
I
yeah,
think they actually, somebody took the head, one of the kids, while they were looking everything over, put it in a bag and ran with it to get away. One of the students.
Why would that not surprise me? But yeah, it's interesting stuff. Yeah. So Tom. So going back to the root. So otherwise, beside the 17. Oh crap! I think I'm gonna screw the year up again. 1784 was it?
Yeah.
Uh,
First case, known case, recorded case.
yeah. So basically, I'm trying to figure out like. So that basically started the whole, I guess, urban legend per se. I mean, I don't know how else to word this. Maybe folklore about this mysterious root that can supposedly, grow from grave to grave to your family.
Yeah. And then, and then someone else would become inflicted. And yeah, it was a weird, I guess, a weird way of trying to find something out or figure something out. But they did call the guy a quack, and he was a Romanian doctor. And that's why they put faith in him firstly. And that's probably also what helped fuel the later vampire idea. Spectral ghoul is one thing, but the vampire idea of an actual vampire was due to that. So I'm sure there was an amalgamation of different things coming from different cultures and people's beliefs and superstitions and fears. And before you know it, you got that.
What more can you do with that? I mean, I guess back in the day, I guess you don't really need steak or garlic to keep the vampires away. In this case, you just basically do a lot of different things that you said. So
yeah, the steak, actually, the garlic steaks were actually used on witches. There's a case in New Hampshire where Goody Cole, Eunice Cole, when she died, she was arrested like 9 times for witchcraft, spent a ton of time in jail. But when she died, they took her out and they buried her, and they drove a stake through her heart to keep her buried.
Oh, God.
And,
Yeah.
So, and that was a witch. It wasn't a vampire. And I get the garlic, from what I understand, was worn because if they dug these people up, they smelled so putrid, obviously rotting away. The garlic helped just under the nose.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like that special flour that like plague doctors use in their mask to help cover the scent of that too.
Posy.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, posies. Yes. What a weird, fascinating time, I would say. I guess Romania, though. I mean, at least now we came a long way, right, from these vampires. So I guess, yeah, some of it. So I guess Tom, for another fun one, and I can chime into this too. So, do you think vampires still walk among
us? Actually, well, I don't know. I could say a few jokes, but having to do with some people of power or something. But there are a lot of people who join these cults, vampire cults, where they say, okay, yeah, it's a vampire cult. We're human, but it's more of a fad or a fashion or something, a way of life. but they're not like the one, they're not going around sucking blood, turning people into undead or anything like that. But there is a vampire in every culture, a vampire sort of creature ingrained in every culture. And they don't necessarily, bite someone on the neck or something. It's different things, but it's the same idea. So there had to have been, something out there a long time ago to create this in every culture.
Well, that's so okay. So my theory is like with these Hollywood movies nowadays, right? They had to start somewhere. So it makes me wonder back in the day, and maybe even recent times, I'll even say now too, just to kind of make the point here. So like with cryptid, we'll just say, like for example here, I'll go with cryptid. So people to this day witness like dogman sightings, right? Or werewolf, because they think that it's a werewolf, not dogman. First thing they think of is like like the Howling or American Werewolf in London, stuff like that. So
Right.
they kind of tell themselves like this can't be happening because this is supposed to be Hollywood. But I almost feel like Hollywood had to have gotten these ideas somewhere. So is it based off of real monsters or in a weird way? I don't really know how to think of this in any other term. Is that maybe we actually believed the monsters were real enough that we actually made the monsters come to life. And that's kind of weird to say it, but like I feel like, we thought up this idea of what to say American Werewolf in London, right? So we bring this werewolf creature to life, but because people became so afraid of the idea that this could actually exist, boom, next thing you know, now we have like these weird cryptids called dogmen that are all over the place, especially in areas where you would think nothing like this even exists. Same with Bigfoot or whatever, and then now all of a sudden you actually hear people say like, "Yes, I thought it's werewolf," and it reminded me of this movie.
Yeah, you're right. I know when Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, he actually took some of the, like Mercy Brown case from 1892 in Exeter, Rhode Island. He actually took that and used it as part of a platform for his book, because in his book, the town is called Exeter. And Lucy Westenra, who is, remember how she's exercised for vampirism, Mina Harker's best buddy, that mirrored Mercy Brown's, case. And Westenra is not, it's a strange name. So some people think it came from Western Rhode Island, which Exeter is in Western Rhode Island. And so his creature was hideous. And then you go get Bela Lugosi, and somebody says, let's make a Dracula with this charming guy, striking looks and all this. And the next thing you know, Dracula is this beautiful, striking guy who's romantic and can charm anybody and stuff, not this hideous creature. So, yeah, you're right. Somebody sees that and they're like, ooh, it's Dracula. But the real Dracula was a very hideous creature, the original.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I'll say it again for the record. Again, it's like it's a. I know Bram Stoker. Oh God, I should have really looked this one up too. Well, I'm gonna bite my tongue on this one, but I'm just gonna say when it came to Bram Stoker, we cannot forget what fall. I want to say followed, but now I really just don't know. Maybe Tom, you might know the answer, but Nosferatu, right?
Yeah, Nosferatu.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's a Bram Stoker's family were trying to basically say Nosferatu was a ripoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and then I think it was the wife of Bram Stoker that were trying to get rid of all existing copies at the time of what Nosferatu.
They
So that way,
did. In fact, they did get rid of all but one, which survived, and that's the one they made many copies of that we see today. The company went bankrupt because of that. Because he basically, according to them, ripped off the book. All he did was change the names, but basically it was the book, page for page, I guess. And they got sued, and they got in the Stoker family won. The
yeah,
estate of Bram,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've always been a fan of Nosferatu. I think it's just the fact of the silent era, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
it's just fun to watch it that way. Because nowadays, you can basically just turn anything on and have it as background noise. Whereas silent films, you have to actually watch what's going on and read what's on the screen. You can't
Yeah,
just
and the
walk
way they
away.
did all the special effects was amazing too. It was during
Yes.
that German Impressionist era where they were, like if you notice the buildings are really weird and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of funny because when they were having that, they sent a young student over. England sent a young student over who was studying film here and in England. They sent this guy over to take some notes, learn a little bit. And that guy's name was Alfred Hitchcock.
Love Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, I love his work too. Uh, um, yeah, one of my favorite scenes from Nosferatu has got to be the classic staircase scene with his silhouette walking up the stairs.
Oh yeah,
That's probably one of my favorites. But yeah,
yeah,
no, yeah,
makes a great T-shirt.
it would.
Yeah.
Great T-shirt. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I guess so. Tom, like now that it's getting into the spooky season, like, do you have like a movie ritual that you always have to watch around October?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of we do. We watch Evil Dead parts 1 and 2. This movie called Dolls. It was
I
a
love that
Charles Band
movie.
one. Oh yeah, huh? It's awesome.
Oh, I
And we
love
also
it.
watched Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, and usually that and some Scooby Doo cartoons. Oh, and it's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. You got to have that one.
Oh God, yeah. You can't go wrong with Scooby Doo, and yeah, I mean that one's always got to be in there too. The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Yeah, yeah. Besides from what you mentioned, I'll throw in Bride of Frankenstein,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'll throw in the 2009 Trick or Treat film by
Oh yeah. I saw that was that was a cool one. I saw that one a couple of times.
yeah, I just love the idea of that with the Sam being the symbol of Halloween, basically. That if you don't follow the rules, Sam is gonna get you. So yeah, so maybe one day we'll see a sequel to that, but at the same time, I think it became so big that we don't really need a sequel. But yeah. All right. So, Tom, is there anything that we can or that we didn't mention about the vampires in Vermont that we can add in, or
Well, there is one thing, like I said before, the most of the cases all over New England were from Rhode Island, and we know that New England's the vampire capital of the world, and Rhode Island's the vampire capital of New England. And because of all these cases, there's so many of them, and there's a lot of documented ones. That's the best thing about it. The one, like I mentioned before, in Connecticut, they actually were digging the cemetery up because it was, it was falling out of the sandbanks. There was a sandbank company there, sand company, and I guess they went in a little too far, and the casket started coming out of the ground. They found 3 graves. The one said IB, one was NB 13, IB 45, and JB 55. They didn't know what they meant on the coffins, but the one, the JB 55, had stone slabs all the way around it, protecting it. And when they opened it up, they found that the body had been taken apart. But basically, the femur bones and everything, and the ribs were removed, and the femur bones were put in a skull and crossbone manner. What they figured was after they took it to they brought it to Washington, the Smithsonian, to study it. And they did find out this guy died of tuberculosis, and that they probably performed a ritual to save IB or NB at some point. But he was so far gone, there was nothing left, so they did that manner of exorcism. They recently found the guy's name. It was John Barber. They used a DNA test, and from that, they found out that he was exorcised around 1826 when his son Nathan Barber became sick. So this is really cool. And they used DNA testing. They was like 99.999% on that this man's name was John Barber. So we
Hmm.
have not only a case of like vampirism that we actually have the physical evidence for, pictures and everything, and the bones and whatnot, but now we have a name.
Yeah, that is interesting. Huh. Yeah, and just to clarify, the one in Connecticut, you're talking the town Williamton, right?
It's actually Griswold.
Griswold.
Yeah, and in Jewett City is a little town, is a little village of that, and there was a case there too that was pretty interesting, where a bunch of reporters all showed up for them to burn the bodies of another family to
Man,
try
talk
and
about
cure,
burning bodies, man.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I
that
guess
was
that
another
makes
thing.
sense.
Yeah, well, what they did in like that one and in Foster, Rhode Island, the Young family, they burned the body of the daughter while everyone stood around and inhaled the smoke, thinking that would cure them.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
And the funny
Okay.
thing about this is these people were not like dumb or stupid people. Like they were celebrated war heroes. They were part of the legislatures for their towns or, villages or even states later on. They were some of them very, very educated, but this is all they had to go by.
Yeah, exactly. They at that point in time they were willing to basically do anything to test to see if it would work. That I guess that's the power of the faith that they had. I guess would be a good way of putting it. They
Yeah.
literally put their faith into whatever sounded good to try to get rid of the dreadful disease. Yeah, why not?
And
And
save their family, because I'm sure they were hearing all along that it's not just one person gets sick and then dies. It's like sometimes 6, 7, a whole family is gone in a year.
yeah, perfect example would be that Spalding family. Like it was
Hmm.
almost like what was it? Like every couple months, I think. Right? It seemed
Yeah,
like.
well, someone was getting sick after a while. Yeah, and
Yeah,
the Tillinghast lost 6 of their children in 6 months.
yeah. Now that's more scary. I think 6 months, 6 children. Ugh. I couldn't even imagine living back in that type of time frame to have to.
Yeah,
Well, I guess in a way we kind of did, right, with COVID-19. I mean, we kind of
yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
what to do.
It's still around.
Yep, it is. All right, Tom. Well, last time I forgot to ask you this, so I apologize for everybody that listened to that last episode too. So I'm gonna, um, I want to ask you. So at the time of the last recording, I think you had a new book out, and forgive me, I can't even find it now. Oh, Strange New England. Here it is. You had Strange New England. So what is Strange New England, and like what is the future of you right now? Because now that we're heading, as people are hearing this is October, but as you and I are speaking,
Yeah.
Tom, right now, so you have some crazy events coming throughout the month of October. You even have like
Hmm.
your infamous you become the investigation, which is sold out, by the way, as of this recording. But yeah, talk to us about what is going on in the world of Tom.
Well, yeah, Strange New England. That came out last year, and that's a great book because it tells about all kinds of people, really strange things about New England, the people and everything. Some are ghosts, some are just wild. Some guy brings somebody back to life. Someone leaves their whole fortune to a person they met on a Ouija board, things like that. And so, the Ouija board gets all the money and stuff, and that kind of wild stuff. Even wilder than that. But since a new book just came out called New England's Haunted Route 44. And what we did is we covered Route 44 from Plymouth, Massachusetts, all the way to Cohasset, New York, 237 miles. And it's a road trip book. And that just came out a month ago. And that one is, that's really doing well because people love road trips and, ghost stories. And we're working on our latest book, which is Ghost of King Philip's War. And that's doing about a month and a half to the publisher.
Perfect, man. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Now all eight of our Dining with the Dead events have sold out for October. But yeah, you're the investigator. We have a great dinner, giveaways, show you how to use the equipment, and you're off and running.
perfect, man. Perfect. Yeah. And I know last time we were talking, we kind of touched on some equipment. Now, is there any type of new equipment that you would like to share with us this time that you would recommend for people? I know we were talking about like dowsing rods and stuff like that last time. And you were mentioning last time too how like you don't really need to spend like $1,200 on equipment. So I guess for just new listeners, especially now for October, it's the perfect time for investigations and kind of get to the point of pretty soon we'll be at the thin layer of the Day of the Dead, where the dead can finally walk among the living for like a couple of days or a day, depending on how you want to look at that. But yeah, is there anything you would like to discuss for that?
Depending on their condition, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, if you just have your phone and you have a voice recorder and a camera and video recording, that's great. You don't need to go out and spend 25 grand on stuff. I know people that are going out and buying these machines that show skeletons and stuff, and come to find, it's actually a glitch in the machine. It was designed for something that didn't work by Xbox. It's a cool unit. It's cool to have it and look at stuff. We play with it because I bought one for like $14 on eBay just to see why it does what it does, and it's cool. It's fun to look at and go, look, that's me walking around with green dots. But the best equipment you have is yourself. Your feelings, your gut feelings. You just open yourself up to where you are, and be courteous to energy, and just a decent recorder. I use reel-to-reels, but I know you can use small cassette recorders because they're still really good. They pick up everything. They'll pick up a mosquito buzzing past you. So that's why those are great. Then again, a nice camera. You don't have to have anything special. We use SLRs because it doesn't have an autofocus. People say, look at that orb, and it was just like a water dot or something you can't see, but it'll focus on it because it's really close. They immediately focus on the closest thing. So if you got something like that, that's fine. The old-fashioned stuff seems to be the best still.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, it is cool with some of this new stuff that they do have, like maybe one day I'll take a shot at grabbing a Boo Buddy. I don't know if I would want the big interactive one, but maybe I'll just take the $80 one, which is basically to help tell me if it is being touched, basically.
Oh yeah, we got one of those. Yeah, those are great. We put it in the corner, and where children might be present. We also have a light meter where you got a bright light and a meter, and if something breaks the plane, it bleeps red, and it goes to a number of how many times the plane is broken, and that's pretty cool too. It's almost like having an alarm of sorts. We got a couple of those. Those are cool, just in case.
Is that similar to like the oh god, I forget the exact name, but the grid on the wall, like the green grid there for shadows, I want to say. Is that kind of similar?
It is kind of, yes, it is, except it's just like one laser beam, like you would see in like, the movies where they got to dive over them because they got to breaking into a place and you see the red beam. Well, it's like that. It's got one beam it's a sensor. And if you put a light in front of it, right on the sensor, a nice bright light, it's okay. But if you go like this, put your hand between it, and you break that light plane, it goes off. And the grid, the grid's cool too. I mean, try anything like that. Those are cool. Simple things. You don't need to go out and spend $900 on an exo-affiliated Geekobrack Roomba. Those aren't going to say don't bother with them. They're just using a $30 recorder. Let's go find someone else.
Yeah, why not, man? Why not?
They're going to speak. You're going to get them.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Well, Tom. So it sounds like you got, like I said, and like you said, you got quite a bit of stuff. So you got Strange New England, Strange New England that came out last year. You said, oh God, you just said the title too, Haunted
Haunted
Route
Route 44,
44,
yep. Yep,
and
that just
then
came out.
yeah,
And King Philip's War goes for next year.
perfect. And then finally, you got your event that's coming up that you said is basically sold out. So I
Yeah.
guess that's always good, man. I'm
Oh,
glad that
yeah.
you and your wife are still keeping it creepy for the fall time. So that's good.
Oh, we're actually doing a vampire tour in Connecticut.
There you go.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
kind of fun. We're
that's
looking forward to
hilarious.
it.
Oh, it sounds like a lot of fun time. So, I see that you're coming to New Hampshire, so that's always fun. What's
Loudon, yeah.
is that like another one that's close by to one of the New Hampshire ones?
Well, actually, Bonstead, New Hampshire would be the Janie or Annie Dennett case in 1810, and we're going to be in Loudon. We're doing a Haunted New Hampshire presentation in Loudon.
Haunted New
So we're
Hampshire.
telling ghost stories of New Hampshire.
Ooh. Yeah, there's quite a bit of there, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, it's a
And
lot of fun, that state.
yeah, and there's a lot of like kind of similar here. There's like haunted hikes that you can take in Vermont and New Hampshire, so that's always fun. So yeah, I want to check more about that too. The haunted hikes in New Hampshire, the other book that I know of. But yeah,
Oh, is that Mary O'Connor? Marianne O'Connor, Haunted Hikes in New Hampshire?
I want to say that's the name. I don't have it in front of me to really like
Yeah, it's
say
got a
yes. That
skeleton
is
walking with a stick.
yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great book. We did a few book signings with her. She's a great person.
Yeah, Marianne O'Connor.
Yeah, she's great person. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I know she did a revived version of it, so I definitely gotta check that one out
Oh,
too.
cool.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, Tom, before I let you go, so if people wanted to keep up with everything spooky on your end, where can people go?
So they can go to www.tomdagostino.com or www.diningwiththedead1031.com. 1031 being Halloween, so.
No.
Some people ask that. What's the 1031 for?
Okay. Well, I guess you could always say, well, it is 10:31 p.m. All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We just made that up. Yeah.
Yeah, we just made that up. All right, Tom. Well, once again, thank for your time, and tell your wife I said hello, and that if she ever wants to talk about her photos and your stuff together, feel free to give her my regard too. So yeah,
thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So until next time, we will maybe talk to Tom about something else. But for anybody listening, feel free to reach out and see if you want Tom back to discuss whatever you can think of, I guess. Give me some ideas there. Me and Tom can go back and forth maybe. So anyway, until next time, everybody, take it easy, because keep your eyes open. It's that time of year, because you just never know if an apparition will appear in front of you. So before we let you all go, we're going to actually give you one more little teaser. So here's some bonus little dialogue from Tom and I. And Tom is going to talk to us about witch windows.
Yep, witch windows. This was a funny thing I came across. And it seems to have originated in Vermont. And the legend is these windows that you see, like over, just above overhangs and gables that have been added. The legend behind it is that they put these windows crooked or sideways because the witches could not fly sideways on their brooms. Therefore, they'd never be able to enter this window. More of the conservative, I guess, Yankee thought is that, well, I got this wonderful window. I just added this addition to my house. I'm not getting rid of it. I'm going to use it. and they add the addition, of course, to the house, and now there's no more light going into that room where it used to be a window, so they'll stick the window up above the addition, and of course, the roof being slanted, the window's going to be slanted. They'll do everything they can to fit it. But the witch window got its name basically because of that. The witches can't fly sideways.
Which I guess we can just throw in the joke that sometimes you'll see Halloween decorations where it looks like the witches splat against the wall. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. So funny thing-ish is, so people may or may not know, but Vermont is also known for one singular type of witch trial, which I've already cannot say the last name again. But
Widow Krieger. Oh, like Robbie Krieger of the Doors, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about Widow Krieger. Poor lady. So yeah, Widow Krieger supposedly was trialed because she was supposedly a witch, and the only way to prove her innocent was to basically, prove her innocent by the Duncan chair. So, I mean, yeah, we already know pretty much what happened with the Duncan chair, right, people? I mean, Tom can basically tell you the same things, which is in Punnell, Vermont, and it's right by the Hoosick River, and she had to prove she was innocent by almost drowning, which, well,
if you floated, you were a witch. If you sunk to the bottom, you weren't a witch. But if you sunk to the bottom, you probably drowned. So they're like, well, she was innocent. Oops.
And that seemed to have happened throughout the Salem witch trials, which, yeah. So no wonder why a lot of people died, because we human beings were way stupid back in the 1690s for sure, where we didn't realize that we can actually float. So thank God yeah. So thank God we kind of now are a little bit smarter back then, but I mean, let's just say that, at this point in time, like we kind of said about the vampires, with their face and everything, they're basically try anything to at least get what they want for results, I guess I'm going to say. Because
that'll work.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a little bonus content for you all about witch windows and the Only Vermont Witch Trial. So,
and she did sink, and they almost drowned, and they saved her, and she was redeemed.
Yes, she was redeemed.
She was declared innocent because she almost died.
Yes. So thank God she didn't die, because I can only imagine what would have happened. That whole river would have been cursed, I bet. And we don't want that.
No.
All right, people. So once again, I hope you enjoy your spooky Halloween and October, and remember to get out there and see what you can find or what is haunting you.